Welcome to the assembly video for Shapeoko 5 Pro. I'm Kevin Barnett from Carbide 3D HQ here in California. We are so proud to debut this Shapeoko 5 Pro machine in 4x4, 4x2, and 2x2 sizes for you, the consumer. If you're upgrading from one of our previous machines, we're glad you're here. If you're just joining the family for the very first time, welcome. This is a culmination of 10 years of work, feedback, development, all of that engineered into this machine so that we can provide you the best experience possible. This assembly is going to be the easiest assembly we've ever had. This machine is best in class design and capability. Right out of the box, you're ready to cut wood, metal, plastics, and do a whole variety of different cutting tasks that you're going to enjoy. As you open the boxes, the first thing you're going to notice is the amount of pre-assembly that has been done. The gantry pre-assembled, Z-axis pre-assembled, the drag chain pre-wired on the right-hand side. There is much less to do. There is a little bit of a repetitive task when it comes to putting together the hybrid bed. The time on that is going to vary depending upon your machine. But it's straightforward, simple, and we've ensured the accuracy of these components. You are going to enjoy this assembly and getting started with the machine. The PDF assembly guide will be making regular appearances throughout this video. It may not always match up with the exact version that you are seeing right now. Don't freak out.
Was I freaking out?
We are always working to improve that assembly guide along with this video. You're a rational human being capable of complex thought. Well, maybe not. Never mind, just freak out. In all seriousness, our end goal is that you have success with your machine, and the constant improvements to the video and the PDF guide are part of that. Just reason it out and follow along. Here I'm going to take you through the assembly for the 4x4, the largest of the three machines. If you have the 4x2 or the 2x2, know that all the components are exactly the same. It's just the hybrid bed that's going to vary in size. If you haven't yet visited my.carbide3d.com, please do, especially if you're thinking about getting a machine or right now you're waiting for your machine to arrive. There you will find every resource that we have: projects, training, information, support contact, ideas. There's a whole lot to explore on my.carbide3d.com well before your machine arrives, so you're prepared to spend the hour to hour and a half assembling your machine and get right to enjoying it. This video is meant as a supplement to the assembly guide. We shot it in real time. Certain portions will be sped up, mostly associated with the hybrid bed. You might want to pause it, or if you don't have your machine yet, watch it all the way through and reference it later. There will be some slight differences in assembly strategy as well as the order. Don't worry about that. When in doubt, follow your PDF guide. That is the best source. Let's get you started. Let's get you making. We want to take you from boxes to a fully assembled machine where you can start to enjoy the power that is CNC. Here we go.
Step 1. Base frame construction and gantry mounting. First thing you want to do, unbox everything. You're going to get a couple of huge boxes if you have a 4x4, 4x2, 2x4, might be a little bit different configuration. We have the big machine going in here. Winston and I decided to unbox these two on the table where the machine is going to be built. You might want to do it on a different table or perhaps on the floor and then move parts to your table as you're starting to assemble your machine. That's what we're going to end up doing later. Two big boxes. One is going to contain your Y rails along with some other boxed materials. The other will contain your gantry along with the hybrid table, slats, and MDF. Go ahead and inspect everything, pull it out, and compare it against this list. We're really proud of the packaging here. This machine should get to you undamaged, despite what is sure to be the shipping company's best efforts. You'll immediately see on the gantry how much pre-assembly has already been done for you. If you have that 4x4, invite a friend over and enjoy the build together. Your assembly table doesn't need to be 100% to size. You can have a little bit of an overhang. You just have to be cautious of that. You're going to see that here in the video. For the long-term home of your machine, we definitely recommend a table that's larger than the overall footprint of the machine itself. We have a tables video in the playlist. Winston and I were taking our time taking the machine out. First time we had had a production machine in our shop. We were excited just the same as I know you're excited. Whether you're watching this before you get your machine or thinking about getting a machine, or if you're watching this and those boxes are sitting right across from you. We know exactly how you feel. We're just a bunch of CNC nerds too. Go ahead and pull out the 4 base frame tubes, which should be in their own package. The spacing for them is 15.7 inches. Eyeball it. Then we're going to pull out the rails and you can align them with the Y rails. Now here we're going to start on the right side as you are in the manual. So we're pulling everything off to the left so that rail comes in and sits handily on the table, fully supported. So Winston's going to lay in the right side Y, which has a lot of pre-assembly done on it as well. You'll notice all the mounting brackets are there for the gantry, which will be up in just a second. You're going to start with the M6x16 screws, 8 per side. You'll notice how few screws, bolts, attachments, and work there really is to assembling this machine. With those 8 secured but not totally tightened, go ahead and move on to the left side rail. I'm bringing it in here, and I'm going to enter the next 8 screws into those base rails. Just take your time to align it. You don't want to cross-thread them, and this is the reason you want to be doing stuff by hand, not with a drill or something that could cross-thread these tubes or damage the Y rails. We've spent a lot of time machining these parts in-house to ensure their accuracy. The last thing we want is you suffering massive disappointment on step 1. Snug but not tight is what we're going for here. 16 screws in, your machine is already taking shape, and it's time for the gantry. Go to both sides and pull the gantry brackets to the very front of the machine. That should make the install a little bit easier. You're going to remove 4 screws, and that would be 2 screws on each side towards the back of the bracket. The front mounting position is going to be for that gantry shift. More on that in another video and at a later time. Your standard mounting position is on the back 2 holes. Bring the gantry in. If it's that 4x2 or 4x4, it's going to be nice and long and heavy. Be careful when setting it up on your machine. You don't want to drop it, certainly not off the table. Position the gantry over the mounting holes and insert the 4 screws. As you can see here in the manual, we have a reference edge and a reference line along with the cross dowel for that M620 socket head cap screw. Be sure and pay attention to the position of the gantry. This is going to help square your machine. It should be engaged with the reference edge. Here I'm giving a little bit of encouragement to the gantry, making sure it's all the way forward. I'm going to go ahead and tighten the screws down. And how about that? 4 screws to mount the gantry. Yeah, I'm blown away too. We've done a total of 20 screws, and this already looks like a full-fledged CNC machine. It's now time to rough square your machine. For this, you'll need to pull out your measuring tape, and it's best to have a friend or assistant to help you out. You have to choose consistent pairs of points. Here, I'm going to hold the tape on the inside back point of the left side Y rail. Winston is going to choose the front inside point of the right side Y rail. Moving to the other side, you have to hit the exact same 2 points of the Y rails, this time in reverse, the front of the left side, the back of the right side, in order to get an accurate picture of squareness. Do yourself a favor here and write down the measurement from left to right, and then make the measurement from right to left and compare the two. Most of you will find that a small adjustment does need to be made. So Winston's going to go to the right side of the machine, I'll be in the back left, and we're going to pull against one another, just gently kind of encouraging the machine. We are off by about a 1/4 inch or so. We're going to go ahead and restring the tape, take a second measurement. It's best to have a partner not only for these measurements to maintain accuracy, but also for the adjustment needing to push and pull. When it comes to a 4x4, it's essential. Some gentle encouragement is all it should take. Winston's going to do a few more adjustments here, and we're going to pull it right into square. If you're consistent about your measurement points, it should take 1 or perhaps 2 pulls through this process to get it all equaled up. After this step, it's going to be time to tighten down your base frame. You can see Winston's getting those final minute adjustments in. Taking an engineer approach will definitely help you here. You've heard measure twice, cut once. This is measure twice, tighten once. Diligence will pay off when it comes to this process. Go ahead and keep that gantry in the front position. Get out your T-handle or hex wrench and begin tightening those front 4 screws. You're about to lock in your base frame. After that is complete, you want to push the gantry back over the next set of 4 screws of your base frame and tighten just those 4 screws. Repeat this process throughout the 4 locations of the base frame screws, and you should have yourself a square machine. We manufacture these parts in-house to guarantee their sizing, make it easier for you, the end user, to assemble and have a square machine. Winston and I are putting the final touches on it. Base frame and gantry all finished. Step 2 is going to cover the HDZ Z-axis install as well as your X motor. Again, a lot of pre-assembly done for you here. The Z-axis already has a spindle carrier on it. This is almost a plug-and-play operation here. The X motor, as well as the end cap covers and the bolts for that are also included. We're going to get to those later. This is where I really like a T-handle. Have that prepared, as well as your M6x20 socket head cap screws. You'll need 4 for the HDZ install. Have those prepared, then bring your Z-axis in and put it on the locator pins. Everything here again has been precision machined and located to make it easier on your end. Push the Z-axis onto those locator pins and make sure you hold it until you have at least 2 of those screws installed. I'm going to put the bottom screws in here, both left and then right. Those M620s should go in nice and smooth. Again, no cross threading. Then you're going to want to pull the Z-axis up all the way to the top here. I'm going to check it. Can't quite get there. Pull it up just shy of the top. That should expose the other 2 mounting locations. Go ahead and put those screws in there and finish off mounting your Z-axis. That's all there is to it. I'm going to finish tightening the Z-axis going corner to corner, making sure everything is snugged up. You only want to do this one time. This HDZ is the most advanced Z-axis we've ever constructed. It's stock equipment on every Shapeoko 5 Pro. With those screws fully tightened, you have mated your HDZ with the gantry mounting plate. Hey look, there's Winston. Next, you'll install the X-axis stepper motor, and for that, you'll have to align the motor coupler. Spin the motor shaft until the coupler is properly aligned, and it easily slips in on that X-axis. Then you're going to use 4 screws. You can call them screws, you can call them bolts. It doesn't matter to me. Put them in on the 4 corners, and I again would tighten them corner to corner, just to make sure everything is snug. You don't want to over-tighten stuff, but you want to have a good feel for that stuff is tight on there, and it's not going to come loose with any sort of vibration or later activity, as I know you plan to run the heck out of this machine, making all kinds of great stuff. Satisfied with that? It's on to step 3. Step 3 is going to be assembly of the hybrid table. Here's where you're going to use a bunch of screws. It's not complicated, it's just a lot of materials. M6x10mm flathead screws, you're going to use 80 of those in a 4x4, obviously less than the smaller machines. And M6 20mm socket head cap screws, 40 of those, and again less on the smaller machines. First thing you want to do, get everything out of the box.
What's in the box?
Don't worry, it's just hardware. Bring out the extrusions along with the MDF, they're packed together. Just start basically aligning things. You're going to want to then pull off the MDF. I'm going to speed things up here, get out the screws, everything else you need. You're going to want a T-handle here perhaps. We don't recommend you use power tools here. I know it's tempting. Again with the cross threading, I'd hate to see you ruin part of the base frame and then have to wait for your machine to get some repair parts. We don't want that happening. So go ahead and put your screws in. Do not tighten them all the way yet. I inserted all the screws first, then I came back and tightened them all. You want to tighten them the front row first, back row second, middle row third. That is our best recommendation based on other machine assemblies. You can see here, I'm going to go through it in a different order. It's a good idea to pay attention to the instructions. Let's get this guy moving a little quicker. How about some music? For the MDF, it's going to be a 5mm hex key and 4 M6x20mm SHCSs, that would be socket head cap screws, per strip of MDF. Again, depending upon the machine, the math will be a little bit different. The parts are the same. Again, per the instructions here, when you're fully tightening your MDF strips down, do the front row first, the back row second, and the middle last. Let's speed this guy up again. Bring back the music. And you might need to take a break at some point as well. If you're assembling live with this video, now's the time to take a pause and go ahead and finish off that hybrid table. For the rest of you, we'll keep going. You've made it to step 4 and it hasn't even been that long. We're onto the wiring harness on the right-hand side of the machine. And you'll notice it's already wired into the drag chain. We're trying to do a lot of work for you to get you making faster. Winston's going to take it and pull it underneath the gantry here and orient it up on top of that right side Y rail. 4 M3 by 6mm socket head cap screws are going to provide attachment. The front side is going to attach to the Y right carriage plate, as Winston is doing here. 2 of them there. After ensuring that the drag chain is up on top of the Y rail, you're going to move to the back of the machine, and there's a bracket towards the back of each of the Y rails. This one on the right hand side, you're going to use 2 more of the M3 6mm socket head cap screws to securely attach that drag chain. Be sure and orient the drag chain so you see the most wires coming out of the back of the machine, not on the middle of the machine at the gantry. You should have a lot more wires, that whole wiring harness, on the back of your Y rail. On the back side of the machine, go ahead and open up the cable guide and safely string your wires through there. They will head off to the proximity switch and the other Y motor on the left Y rail. As you can see Winston doing here, be sure you're not pinching your wires. Open that whole canopy up and go ahead and snap it closed back to the other side, ensuring the safety of those wires. Next, you're going to want to install the wire keepers. 2 wire keepers, and you're going to have an M6 by 16 screw here. We had a little bit smaller ones on our early machine, but nevertheless the process is the same. Install 2 screws so that the wire keeper is held in place. Again, providing a place for all the wiring throughout the machine so you can wire it one time and never think about it again. Tighten these down, but don't strip them out. This isn't the same as those metal-to-metal connections. You just want some good tension on it so that the wire keeper is held in place. Next up are the wiring connections on the Y right, so gantry to Y rail. There are 5 different connections to be made here: the Z-axis limit, the Z-axis motor, the X-axis limit, the X-axis motor, and your gantry LEDs.
The breath of the Creator fluttered against the face of the void, whispering, "Let there be light." And light was.
Each cable has a different connector type, so there is only one match for each connector. Be sure and orient the locking tabs to meet one another. This should be simply matching each piece with the correct female and male connectors. Once you have those connections made, go ahead and orient the wires inside around the X motor and inside of the gantry itself. We're going to go ahead and install the end cap on the right-hand side. Be sure none of the wires are caught on anything. Don't have them all kinked and bound up. Just give them a nice turn. Bring in your right end cap. It takes 2 bolts to put them in place. Longer one up top, shorter one on the bottom. Top one goes into place by itself. On the bottom one, make sure you have that grounding wire hanging out. Put the shorter of the 2 bolts through it, and you're going to go ahead and screw that in with the grounding wire connection on the outside. You can push the grounding wire back into the gantry itself so it has a nice clean look as well and isn't going to get caught on anything. Right side of your gantry, all buttoned up. Next to the back Y right, and again you should be able to simply connect the appropriate connectors. Find their mating pair, make sure the locking tabs line up, and that should have you wiring the machine with the correct mating pairs. At the Z-axis, you're going to have to make the same 2 connections for the motor and a proximity switch. Be sure and follow your manual closely. Any questions you have, odds are that document has the answers. On the back of the left side Y rail, you'll make 2 connections, one for the motor, one for the proximity switch, again with the appropriate connectors. Returning to the right side Y rail, it's time to mount the grounding block. You'll use 2 M4 by 30mm SHCSs. You'll go ahead and put those through the longer side of the block so that they can go into the threaded portion of the rail. There should be threaded holes on top and non-threaded holes on the back side of that block, as seen in the manual. With the grounding block secured to the Y rail, go ahead and take the green clad banana plug and put it into the grounding block. All this complete, we're on to step 5. That is installation of the spindle or router. Many of you will start with the Carbide 3D trim router. Go ahead and open that up. We include the wrenches you'll need as well as an extra set of brushes. There are 3 possible mounting positions for your spindle carrier. The bottom is for the Carbide compact router. The middle for the 65mm Air Cooled spindle. The top, the 80mm water cooled spindle, the biggest one that Carbide 3D offers. Since we're installing the router, we're going to go ahead and mount the spindle carrier at the lowest possible setting. I want to get those top 2 bolts secure and then put in the bottom 2 before tightening everything up. And then I like to tighten it in a star pattern exactly how you would the wheel on a car. With the spindle carrier secure, time to bring in your Carbide compact With the spindle carrier secure, time to bring in your Carbide compact router. I let it slide all the way down and then push it up just a bit. You want to make sure you're not clamping on the upper portion where it's going from the main body to the plastic housing on the top. Be sure you're clamping the metal body of the router. And then I'm going to go back and forth, top and bottom, to secure the router. This is a process that's going to go on until the router is secure, not until those bolts are as tight as you can possibly make them. When tight, you shouldn't be able to pull the router up or down, nor spin it inside of the spindle carrier. Next up are the drag chains, and you're going to have two of them. One is going to be on that left side Y rail. The other is going to be on the back of the gantry. The first drag chain on the gantry came pre-wired. This next one, you're going to have to wire with your power cord or your VFD control cable. Here I'm using a screwdriver. You can use one of the large hexes to pop open the drag chain. A little bit of an art. You just pop open one side, be gentle with it. No reason to break these off. Get everything open, and then you can go back and bring in the power cord. When it comes to buttoning it back up, this will be a test of thumb strength and durability. Hope you've been keeping up on your thumb wrestling. You're going to need a bunch of repetitive power for this one. Again, we'll speed it up a bit. This is also if you add air to your machine where the air will go through these same two drag chains. Once you have it all the way routed through that drag chain, go ahead and pull it back around. Here I'm going to click it into the foot that I've already installed on the left-hand side of my gantry. You can now install that left side cap. Again, 2 screws, longer one up top, shorter one on the bottom, and that's it. Don't over-tighten them. We chose to do this in this order. In the instructions you're looking at, it has you put the power through the 2 drag chains before taking them to the machine. You're welcome to try either. I like installing the feet and then simply clicking the drag chain back in when it's completed. Over time, you're going to get familiar with the general machine architecture. The left side Y rail, the right side Y rail, the gantry, the Z axis. You'll hear a lot of terms like this as you become more familiar with CNC. Drag chain pulled through, click it in the back. We are set and done with all 3 drag chains. On to step 6. This will be your controller and your bit setter. The electronics. We have an entire electronics box. You can actually mount it there like a slip mount. This is what I did on our Craig table. And you're going to have to make a number of connections to it. First is the main power. You'll notice there's a main power switch for the power supply underneath. Then you'll plug in the 2 largest connectors. First the switches, then the motors. Once again, be sure and pay attention to the direction of the locking tabs. They should be off to the right side. Again, these connectors are each different. The power pendant is next. The lower left-hand plug is the location for the power pendant. The upper left plug labeled spindle is for an optional bit runner or the VFD if your machine is equipped that way. If you have a Carbide compact router, this connection will be left blank. And finally, your USB control for your computer. We've already added air assist to this machine. We'll have more on that at a later date. Time to go back topside for bit setter. Bit setter is now standard equipment on every Shapeoko 5 Pro, and he is my boy.
Oh, you're my boy!
Thank you, sir.
Bit setter really is the best thing ever. 2 tease nuts in that outer T-track. You'll need 2 M6 by 30mm SHCSs. Put them through the top of the bit setter. First one in back, second one in front. You're going to have to wiggle them around a little bit to line them up with those tease nuts. Go ahead and snug them down. He's in his permanent home. Bit setter utilizes that inside plug there. Simply plug and play. Here's a look at the power pendant and how it works. If you tilt it to the right, it will pop up. And you'll notice the bit setter is active as well as the machine C is lit up. If you press it down in case of emergency or when you leave the machine, you can press it down, tip it to the right, it'll pop back up. It also has a feed hold button on it, which will stop your program. It's simply a pause button. You can then resume your program from there. When it comes to activating your machine, you're going to need software. So Carbide Create is where you will design. Carbide Motion is where you will go ahead and control the machine. We have Mac and Windows downloads for both of these programs, along with cross-platform compatibility. Design in Mac, run it with Windows. Design in Windows, run it with Mac. Whatever you want to do. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of system requirements to run Carbide Motion. This allows you to use a dedicated computer, either Mac or PC, for running your Shapeoko. It's at this point we welcome you to the brand new Carbide Motion in version 3 of our Shapeoko 5 Pro assembly video. This will be your step-by-step guide on connecting to Carbide Motion version 6. We'll take you through the entire setup wizard, as well as machine first movements, so you can get back to making great stuff. With that, let's get started. Number 1, you have to install the software. Carbide Motion lets you control your machine by jogging, setting zeros, and loading and running G-code, in this case contained in your .c2d file if you're working in Carbide Create and Carbide Motion. You can also load the .nc files coming out of other programs. A tremendous amount of work has been put in to ensure that Carbide Motion functions seamlessly with everything from a Nomad 883 to a Nomad 3 and a Shapeoko 3 to a Shapeoko 5 Pro. Head on over to carbide3d.com/Carbide Motion and click Get Carbide Motion. Download and install the program. Next, with your computer on, connect the USB cable running from your controller on your machine to your computer and open Carbide Motion. Once open, you'll click the Setup New Machine button located at the bottom center. You'll see an indication you've entered the machine setup wizard and you're ready to go. Click Next. Here's where you want to make sure that your machine is powered up. For the Shapeoko, that's a 2-step process. Click the power switch on the bottom of your Shapeoko control box, and on the power pendant, turn the E-stop to the right and be sure the button is popped up. In this menu, you'll see a drop-down box that allows you to select which Carbide 3D machine you own. With your machine on and the appropriate machine selected, click Next. Here you'll be asked to connect to the machine. Click that button and wait for it to say Connection Established. Now your Shapeoko CNC router stores the most basic configuration parameters in the machine itself, so it's important to download these settings the first time you run your machine. Select your machine type and size, click Download. Once the download is done, you're going to move on with Next. The setup wizard is a one-time thing, but initializing your machine is something that happens every time you turn it on. Before each use, your machine has to be homed. This process moves the spindle to a known location on the back right of the machine, where the coordinates are set to 0. This initialization process allows the machine to go to the same location after being shut down and upon restart. The initialization process utilizes the homing switches on each axis. Additionally, this step includes an optional way to test all of the homing switches before initializing your machine. When this menu pops up, click Initialize Machine and expect that movement will occur right away. Once initialization is complete, you'll have the opportunity to test your machine motion. This is an optional step that tests your motion before you go any further. If you're confident your machine is going to move or has moved properly, you can skip this, or you can go ahead and give it a shot. Move X left, move Y forward, move Z down. You can press them back and forth. The machine will move about an inch and will give you a feel for how it's going to behave. If you don't want to do this, go ahead and hit Next. This leads you to configuring the bit setter. Bit setter is our automated tool measurement system that simplifies jobs to use more than one tool. For the bit setter to function, you have to configure the location of your bit setter and enable it. If you don't want to use bit setter, you can uncheck the enable option and click Next. There are some special circumstances where you won't want bit setter enabled, but for right now, go ahead and set it up. After clicking Enable Bit Setter, perform a manual check. With your finger, depress the bit setter a few times and make sure the indicator changes in the setup wizard. The default position for the bit setter is pre-programmed into Carbide Motion. You can check this by clicking Move to Default Position. If for some reason you've relocated your bit setter, you can manipulate the position of your axis with the X and Y until it is directly above that new location, and then save bit setter configuration. While this option does exist, 99.9% of the time you're going to use the standard location. One quick note here, the vertical position of your spindle is already preset. The Z plus and minus buttons are provided so that you can move the spindle up and down to make it easier to configure your X and Y position. The Z height of your spindle is not manually configured. With bit setter established, it's time to choose your spindle. You can have a few different setups here. Select the spindle type that you have on your machine, the Carbide Compact Router or the VFD Spindle. With the Carbide Compact Router, you can be utilizing the automation of BitRunner or be operating manually. If you are using BitRunner, you want to click Use BitRunner to control router. If you're simply using the Carbide Compact Router, go ahead and check Show Pop-ups on RPM Change if you'd like to be notified of speed changes in your project. Definitely check that box if you're running manually with the router. Click Save Changes, and then Next. The last step is selecting Machine Options. You can either operate in inches or in millimeters. I prefer millimeters for the small stuff when I'm at my machine. You can select whichever you're most comfortable with. Next up, there are two possible boxes. The Enable Touch Keyboard is if you plan to use a touchscreen PC and want a small numeric pop-up keyboard to appear. Next, Enable Remote Access. This allows Carbide Create to send files directly to Carbide Motion. If you'd like that capability, go ahead and check that box. Once you've made all your selections, save changes and click Next. With that, you'll be notified your setup is complete. Go ahead and click Finish. Carbide Motion will now disconnect from the machine so you can restart with that configuration you've just established. Your machine will now run the basic initialization process and you're ready to make something.
There you have it. The entire machine put together and you're set to get making. Remember, my.carbide3d.com is your major resource for everything associated with being a part of the Carbide 3D family. Support, ideas, projects, questions answered, places you can seek out. Our community is also a fantastic resource. Post something there. People from inside Carbide 3D are in the community all the time. You can get answers from other users as well as the company directly. You've selected an incredible machine and we can't wait to see what you're going to make.